Sort of a follow-up from the previous video. I think there's going to be quite a few responses to FedeA's recent video. Cannibalism, again, and in that general vein, taboos in general. What's a taboo? A taboo is sort of using the irrational to do something pretty rational. A taboo, why do we have taboos? It's because, well, apparently they're necessary for our existence. Now, we're going to have to understand what we mean by necessary, but I'll deal with that in a minute. But what I think a taboo is, it's something that we use, we anathematize certain things. We make certain things haram. They are simply forbidden. They are simply what's beyond that door. It's just what you find if you're the protagonist in an H.P. Lovecraft novel. You find that which is forbidden, that humanity must not know. Or you do something that is so forbidden and so blasphemous and so monstrous that it results in something absolutely hideous. You know, we have a taboo against incest, I guess, because we've seen what the results of that can be. Badly formed humans. Badly adapted humans, so we don't do that. I've never looked into whether or not animals commit incest, but I know that animals are perfectly capable of acting in, say, sexually deviant ways. I've seen my cats do it all the time. But taboos generally have some sort of reason behind them, right? You have certain taboos. I'm talking about cannibalism, and I would say cannibalism is something that's likely to turn us all against each other in times of scarcity. We'll just start eating each other. That's probably what would happen in any case, but by making it absolutely forbidden, we lessen that likelihood. I'm sort of a scholar of ancient history, and or dilettante, really. And my ancestors, the ancient Celts, would occasionally engage in cannibalism if their honor was at stake. In other words, if they were surrounded, outnumbered, and starving, and they had to either surrender or hold out a little bit longer, they would decide that they were going to kill a few of them, their own number, and eat them. They did this, I think, at Elysia, where you saw this in the TV series Rome, or they may have done it. It's unclear. Where they were in a large fort and they were surrounded by the Romans, and the Romans starved them out, so they killed a few of their elderly and old and young and ate them in order to hold out a little bit longer. It didn't do them any good. They had to surrender anyway. So yes, even though their culture normally held cannibalism to be taboo, they were willing to forego that taboo in times of dire need as a society. In other words, we will say that cannibalism is a bad thing and a taboo and haram and an anathema until such time as we have no other option. Then we're willing to explore other means, and suddenly we're willing to consider things that we normally wouldn't consider. The ancient Celts, the Gauls, they were notorious for their sense of honor and easily offended egos and the sense of pride. And if a Celt was defeated in battle when they attacked the ancient city of Pergamon, when they invaded Asia Minor and became the Galatians, they lost to a Greek army. They were defeated. They couldn't handle that, so the more noble of them killed their wives, their children, and then killed themselves. Their honor was more important than survival itself, even though they wouldn't normally think of, killing their kids or killing their wives, whom they presumably have some sort of emotional attachment to, unless there was a bigger principle at stake. And in their culture, and I think most warrior cultures work this way, honor is more important than anything. So you will sort of do things in extremis if you will dispense with your taboos if you believe that a higher principle is at stake here. You transvalue your normal values in times of extremis. And it doesn't mean that you didn't really oppose cannibalism before. It's just that the circumstances have changed so radically that it might actually be a benefit to society for us to engage in cannibalistic practices. Or it might be a benefit to society for us to kill each other, kill members of our own family. It just depends on how you define society's interests. As a warrior society, it's always important to make sure that you save face in front of enemies and always have people respecting you, because respect is a means of defending yourself. Respect is a means of getting your enemy to take you seriously and think twice about messing with you and things like this. So you just say defeat is unacceptable, which you sort of think is good for survival. Honor is a valuable commodity, etc., etc. But I would say that honor in certain circumstances and in certain societies is more important than life itself. Again, you see elements of this in cultures where people believe it's better to die than back down. And many people do still believe this to this day. In fact, not backing down, not losing face is often better than telling the truth, better than facing reality to some people. People will lie to avoid looking stupid, to avoid losing face. So reality isn't what's at issue here anymore. Reality is what other people think of me. So what is this sort of distilled to? What's the principle that's at stake here? Is whatever we've agreed shouldn't be done. We know we understand why, but we can also agree that we will suspend our taboos under certain circumstances. And why we do that? Okay, FedeA, you seem to imply that, if I understand you correctly, that evolution has resulted in the adoption of certain taboos because that ensures the survivability of the tribe. Now, I'm not trying to strawman you here and saying you're putting an impetus or a teleology behind evolution here. But I would say that you're maybe not deliberately sneaking anything in here, but you're just implying that a will to life is the important principle here. We want to stay alive. We want security. Security means we band together. If we band together, we enhance our chances of survival. And if we start to eat each other, that plays havoc with our cohesion as a society. It's the same thing as if we allow, say, murder or theft or whatever. These things will undermine our ability to cohere as a society and thus undercut our chances of survival. Now this, as I say, kind of bit of sleight of hand here, but I don't mean that you meant this, but an assumption in that is survival is what motivates the whole thing, which I'm not so sure of. Again, I don't think that we see survival as an end in itself. I don't think most people live their lives that way, to be perfectly honest. In fact, I think that it goes without saying that we don't, to the point where we often delude ourselves about what death really is. Boccaccio famously said, we all know that we're going to die, and yet we live as though we were going to live forever. Well, if we know that we're going to die, why should we do anything? Well, because while we're here, we have access to that which we want. We have the capacity to love. We have the capacity to express power, Nietzsche's will to power. We have the capacity to explore and understand what the universe is, the will to knowledge. We have the capacity to philosophize on what existence is, the will to meaning. The will to life is just is just one of many possible motivations. I don't think that there is an impetus behind existence, and I don't think there, or at least I don't think there is one. I think it all depends on who you ask. And I think that's why I think when people say you have to find your own meaning, this is what you're going to have to discover. What does life mean to you? To some people, life apparently means nothing. Life is just a pain in the ass. And they just want to get out of here as quickly as possible. All right, well, I think that as we evolve as, in terms of science, we have increasing ways to do that very quickly. Off you go, back to non-existence. That's fine. And cannibalism isn't so much an impediment to our survival, because in certain circumstances it's not. If we wanted to, speaking of H.P. Lovecraft, there's his story, The Rats in the Walls, it's a story about a Scottish, I think, nobleman who raised people in this cavern beneath his castle in order to consume them. And these humans, over the hundreds of years that this was taking place, down there in his pit where he was raising them, they've turned into animals. And him and his people ate those people that they raised down there. Think about it. Why not? If we raise cows to eat, why not people? We've agreed that this is wrong. Now, that kind of cannibalism, I don't think, can be said to be an impediment to survival. But it could be an impediment to other things. It could be an impediment, say, to wanting to live a moral life. It could be an impediment to wanting to be a moral agent, wanting to be ethical, wanting to be a healthy person even. It could be an impediment to wanting the respect of your neighbors who may not like actually the fact that you're eating people. There's any number of reasons why you might reject cannibalism. But again, we've got this taboo against it where we've stopped thinking about it. And that's the neat thing about Lovecraft. He confronts you with that taboo, and he says somebody has confronted the taboo and has rejected it, or not even rejected it, he's ignored it. He doesn't care. And all the people that he's got down in this massive subterranean cavern are just so much, literally, meat on the table for him. And you're confronted with that quote-unquote reality in that book. And it's pretty horrific as well, because you're placed in a situation, and he's very good at setting the stage for this, you're placed in a circumstance in which this is actually happening. And you either just sort of go, my God, this is such a horrific tale, I wish I'd never read it, or you keep thinking, you keep analyzing the implications of this. And when you start doing that, when you start questioning taboos like cannibalism, it leads you to places that a lot of people get very uneasy. That's why I always harp on self-discipline. I live an ordinary life. I intend to continue to live an ordinary life, and my exploration of taboos and cannibalism and incest and all this horrible stuff, murder, is nothing more than a thought experiment to me. And if you believe that you have the capacity to deal with these sorts of things and not be, as it were, utterly corrupted by them or utterly terrified by them, sent into a state of absolute horror, which I think a lot of people would be if they actually had a vivid enough imagination and, say, read that book, The Rats in the Walls. I think that some people might be traumatized by it. Whereas I just sort of said, yeah, imagine if that was really happening. What if I opened that door that said, don't go in there, and I saw what was there? What would I do? Would I adapt to the fact that, say, okay, this has happened, this is the reality that I'm dealing with? Mass cannibalism, planned systemic cannibalism. Again, it's just a thought experiment because it's just fiction. Would I just go insane, the way Lovecraft always implies? Your mind will simply dissolve under the impact of this horrific truth. Or will I emerge from it in some sense a stronger person? In other words, what was once a horror response has now become a rational one. because I've faced cannibalism, I've faced mass cannibalism, and I've seen it for what it is. It's just people eating other people. Maybe that is horrific to us, but can you rise above it? Can you face the fact that you might be able to rise above that taboo? And rising above that taboo, does it automatically mean I'm going to start eating people? No, I just want to see our taboo for what it is. But you see how it takes courage, though, don't you?